So what's going on, guys? How we doing? Tonight we have an interesting way to do this. We're going to show some graphics off, but Evan said, "Hey, I need the first 10 minutes to talk about some real football." And I said, I'm good with that because we can correlate it to what happened here. And I got the wrong screen on because, well, of course I did, but we'll get that fixed. Evan, I'm going to pop it over to you for the first 10 minutes. I know you worked really hard on this presentation, so I don't know what this is. That's kind of cool for me, so take it away, and then we'll get set up.
Yeah, so I think this is good for week 4. So when we make fantasy football decisions, there's always one thing that within us all that gets in the way of our unbiased opinions is the ego. We're all guilty of our egos clouding our judgment sometimes, and we're not here to call anyone out, but it leads to one of several similar topics I want to cover tonight, which is perfect for week 4: selecting bad players on bad football teams when you're building your lineups. Now, the worst kept secret on this show is that I am a Chicago Bears fan. Despite all the preseason hype about my favorite team, they're off to an 0-3 start with a bottom 2 defense and a bottom 6 offense based on points scored and points allowed in the standings. Murphy's Law is applying to this entire team. And I could yap for hours about my Bears, but our focus is DFS, and Logan would mute me once I get out of control ranting about them. Tonight, I want to use my Bears as a great example for this topic. And before I make my case, I know, for those of you listening, I know what you may be thinking. Oh, but Evan, the Bears suck. They can't throw the ball. I don't want to trust anybody on this team. I'm here to tell you right now, get those thoughts out of your mind. Ignore all the noise on Twitter about Justin Fields being an alleged quote-unquote bad quarterback from all the fake Bears fans who don't even watch the games. With bad teams like the Chicago Bears, there will still be ideal matchups that you'll want to take advantage of for the lower prices and lower ownership percentages. DJ Moore is the best piece on the Chicago Bears and most talented receiver. They're scheduled to face the Denver Broncos this coming Sunday, where Patrick Surtain is the Broncos' only talented defensive players. And even though Surtain will be assigned to DJ Moore, that's still not going to be enough to stop Moore from earning some solid PPR volume. Currently, on DraftKings, DJ Moore only costs $5,600. Over the first 3 weeks, Moore has a total of 15 targets. And while that sounds low, it's worth noting that he's running 96% of the routes on offense, earns 18% of the target share, and 86% of his targets are catchable. This is what I'd call a phenomenal bargain against a defense that gave up 70 points to the Dolphins. And if you look in that same matchup, Cortland Sutton on the Broncos, he costs $300 less than DJ Moore at $5,300, and he has 23 targets so far. He's running 91% of the Broncos' routes, earns 24% of their target share, and 86% of his targets are also catchable. Don't be fooled by the highlight reels for guys like Marvin Mims and Brandon Johnson. Sutton, based on the numbers so far, is the top wide receiver for the Broncos, and he is the safe bet for some discount volume if you're looking for it. Now, on the tight end position, if you don't want to spend a lot of money on that, look at Cole Kmet. Right now, he costs $4,000 on DraftKings and has 15 targets in his first 3 games. He runs 75% of the routes, earns 19% of the target share, and 80% of his targets are catchable. So, if you're planning on building a bargain lineup this week, those are my 3 must-start players. Because I would expect this Broncos at Bears game coming up on Sunday to be an offensive shootout with mostly bad defense happening from both teams. So, in summary, put away your ego. Don't overlook matchups like these where the variables are ideal for a stellar Week 4 lineup.
Well, it's Monday Night Football, so it is a showdown. So you will play Bears. Most people playing showdowns.
No, Bears Chicago is on the Sunday slate.
No, I thought the Bears. I thought Bears Denver was Monday.
No, Denver Chicago is on the Sunday slate.
I thought it was a prime time.
Not this time.
Nope.
It better not be.
Exactly.
That is the most convincing argument I have heard to be playing Justin Fields stacks. Won't do it. But it's a great argument. It really.
See, I can't stack Fields. I just have to take the rushing upside.
Which there will be a lot of against Denver, and I don't mind the Sutton bringback. There's a lot I like about that. I don't know if I'm going to get myself this week, but definitely makes you got to think. There's going to be value. No one's going to want to play Fields, so there's going to be ownership leverage off of it.
Well said, Evan. I'm glad had the technical difficulties in the beginning of the show because that was me having technical difficulties making sure we sent out the links so that way people were able to watch this live and get your message out there. And so that's why the transition didn't go as smooth, but you really picked it up and took off with it. And that's kind of what I wanted you to do, was I think you were worried that you'd be too Bears-centric. But I told you we're at the point in the year where it's like first week, nobody knows what's going on. It's like Christmas, there's presents everywhere. Everyone's like, oh my God, how do I unwrap this? What do I do with this lineup? But now it's like, now everyone wants to play these explosive offenses. They want to play Tua's and Justin Herbert's and, oh my God, the Cowboys look good. And how do I get Tony Pollard in my lineup? And you still have to remember that bad quarterbacks, it might not be efficient, but we're not playing an efficiency game. Like DraftKings is a points game. It's not an efficiency game. In fact, we saw years ago with Jameis Winston, he would throw interceptions, but interceptions are not as much as don't penalize you as much as touchdowns incentivize you. So when he would get 7 or 6 points rather for touchdowns, but only 2 minus points for interceptions, you were able to kind of take the Hyde approach to that. And I think you laid that out perfectly. You can still do the Tua stacks. You can still get, Justin Jefferson's in the big guy. But you can only do that if you lay out the case and, present it with a reasonable and a target share that makes sense. And I think that's so much better, Gov or Donnie, or even Evan can get back in here. Everyone's going to chase, right? Oh, I want to play Devin A-Chain. He did well, But I would say our review shows have kind of transitioned to this, okay, how can we take the information from week 1, 2, and 3 and apply it to week 4? Because we could go through our lineups and be like, well, Devin was a good play. Hindsight's 2020. Raheem Mostert was a good play. Justin Jefferson smashed, of course. Like, everyone wants to, jump on the keyboard and smash those buttons in. And Evan laid out some good cases on some other guys, Marlon Mims, for example, is every time they guys on the field, he's been producing. So, but if you don't dive into the numbers, you might still think like he's behind or he hasn't got his opportunity. It's like you have to know when the opportunity is coming, and that's what won people money with the Dolphins. It wasn't Devin A-Chain scoring fantasy points.
There was some of that, definitely some of that.
No, but it was an opportunity that came available because of the running back room.
Well, it also became available because they were blowing them out by 100 points.
I also want to make clear that I'm not out on Mims. I'm just looking at the numbers that Mims has gotten so far, and he's yet to cross the 30% snap percentage count. He's only
he is
rotated.
very boomer bust.
Exactly, and that's why that's why I had to go Sutton, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, I think he's definitely the safer play, even over Judy. Yeah, like
Yes.
Sutton should be more expensive than Judy right now, but he's
100%.
not.
And see, God, this will be the only review show you hear some slander on Devin A-Chain, because I'm basically saying like that was the boomer bust play. It boomed, so everyone wants to be like, hey, victory laps, look at me. It's like there are still ways that doesn't work. I mean, he was not owned in many contests for a reason. I mean, people were afraid of the risk.
Yeah. Speaking of which, I am very disappointed as a Patriots fan right now, and I don't know how much we want to get into it. They won, whatever, but Mac Jones is such a dirty player. I can't root for the guy anymore. This is 3 times.
You can get into it. Like
I mean, I just as a Patriots fan, I can't root for him anymore. I wasn't a huge fan of him in general, but to 3 times now you have an occurrence of being just blatantly dirty. I think he should be suspended for it. Yeah, it was a light thing, but you don't hit somebody below the belt like that.
And he's done that stuff before.
He's done it before. That's why it deserves a suspension.
Yeah, he slid into people trying to hit him with his cleats. Maybe not in the
He's
groin.
grabbed an ankle before.
It's Draymond Jones. Just let him play.
He does have that Grayson Murray.
He's not a franchise quarterback. Mentally, he could be as good as he wants to be. Mentally, he's not a franchise quarterback. I can't get behind the dude.
I said Murray. I had Matt Grayson Allen. Like he has that kind of like poor decision making at times. But I do think
It's not even poor decision making. We've all been around sports for a while. There has never been a time where I've done anything and I've gotten frustrated and decided I'm going to hit someone below the belt out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's a very Chris Paul thing to do.
It's never crossed my mind. I mean, I don't know how in a moment of competition, especially in a close game, somebody could do that. It's disgusting as a fan, to be honest. I can't.
I do think that brings into a good point about how to lineup building process is like some people. That's why I go to some people like they just trust projections and they just trust numbers and analytics and DraftKings. They're like, I don't even want to be a fan of the NFL sometimes. I just want to plug in player X, player B, and hope that.
And if you did that this week, you probably would have had a lot of Cowboys thinking they would have done the same thing Miami did to Denver.
Right. So that's kind of my point with Donnie. It's like sometimes emotions are good in DFS. Sometimes having that emotional pull is bad. As long as it makes sense with your process, I think you're okay saying I don't want to play Watson or I don't want to play Mac Jones.
Well, I'm fine playing Mac Jones. I just don't think there's ever a reason to play Mac Jones. There's always going to be at least 3 other quarterbacks playing better than him.
Well, I mean, to that point, though, I mean, like, if that's your stance that you don't want to see him do well, it's like, obviously don't stack him. But then you can't, like, play a heavy Patriots, outcome and be like, well, I don't want to play Mac Jones. I have to. Like, imagine if you had the same stance, but you wanted to play this Vikings Chargers game, but you just X'd out Kirk Cousins in your lineup this week. That would be a bad process. Like, You can't tell me, like, you want to build a stack with that game as a possibility and then, not utilize the tools. That's where I'm at.
I mean, I know he's young and everything, but it's just I don't see.
Yeah.
How long does it take to grow up for an NFL quarterback? It's too much.
He went to Alabama. You don't get to grow up. He is what he's going to be.
I know.
Yeah. Like he's at his ceiling. Tua's at his ceiling too. If the weapons don't stay that good, Tua don't stay that good. It's one of the main reasons I didn't like Bryce Young. He's hit his ceiling.
But the thing is, with Mac Jones, it's like, if you're going to be that, you have to be responsible, you have to be smart, and he's not. He's just not.
He never has been.
I know, he's always been a terrible decision maker going back to college with his DUI and everything. This is why I didn't like him. And now he's proven to be dirty when he loses. It's too much.
A loser, yeah.
So how do you correlate that with how do you correlate that with a lineup or a week build next week? Like you could say that's player X. Like when we take any information on Monday or like we're reviewing lineups and things of that nature happen, do you just like forget it, Gov? Do you like?
You have to. You can't take that shit into account. Like if you take that shit into account, you never play Tyreek Hill and you lose. I'm sorry. You just have to take okay. It sucks what he is as a fan.
Right.
But I never think Mac Jones is the ceiling quarterback.
Exactly. But then we come to DFS, and it's like, okay, how well does he actually project? What does the game environment look like? Because he did have a solid day against Philly that was winnable for tournaments. So, like, it's not like he can't put up the numbers. So you just got to, sometimes you have to trust the math. And if you have a gut feeling that he's going to have a bad game, then don't play him. I have that gut feeling about Baltimore every week.
Or let me get Evan back in here for this because I think it would be good because you don't have a whole lot of experience with DFS or with like building a bankroll. To Donnie's point and to like correlate it with your point as a fan, it's like when you put money on DraftKings, you're allowed to spend that money with how you want to. Like, and I don't think enough people put credence in that, Evan. It's like we talk about process all the time, but truly, if you want to just be a Chicago Bears fan and be like, hey, I want to have a Chicago Bears stack because I'm a fan, I'm okay with that too, as long as it fits with what you expect. You know.
Well, I mean, I was to Donnie and Go's point earlier. I was also going to name Adrian Peterson as an example back when he was in his prime, where he was getting in trouble all the time too, and he had horrible news coming out. But when he was in his prime and he wasn't injured, that guy could go, right? So you just trust the talent at the end of the day, despite them proving that they're not being good people at one point, and whether or not they change for the better is up to them. That's outside of football. That's kind of beyond the point. But that was kind of also tied into what I was saying about the ego as well, because you get stuck on these thoughts that may or may not have anything to do with the game, or in my case, you look at the Bears being terrible and you're like, oh, I don't want to touch any of the pieces. But it's like, hold on, this matchup is going to be juicy. Don't count them out.
Go to that point, is like a guy like Raheem Mostert just going to be too high on next week? Or do you think like the markets got smarter?
Well, I mean, I don't think enough people just chase box scores anymore to where he's just going to be super high, because they're playing the Bills. It's not a great matchup. Are people going to play him? Yes, right. A lot of people who play Miami stuff are going to still play him. That think that can happen.
It's a good. He is going to see. It's just in general a good stack game.
Yeah, I was about to say he will see more ownership, but like, no, it's not like it used to be where like in the very, very early days of DFS, everyone who wasn't smart using some sort of projection or sim or something was just box score chasing. So it's like, oh, the dude who just had 50, well, he's going to be good for 30 a week. So you just plug him in, and that doesn't happen.
No, I don't think A-Chain's a bad play this week.
No, I don't either. Like, his price went up a little bit, so like it all depends. Same thing with most of them. Both their prices went up, but I don't really want to play them in Buffalo.
I don't want to play any Dolphins running back, to be honest, but if I did, I would play A-Chain, I guess, just because I don't like Mostert. But
why don't you like Mostert?
I just don't think he's very good.
Based on what?
Yeah, I'd like to know that too, because everywhere he's been pretty damn good. The only knock I've ever seen on him is, can he stay healthy?
It's the injury concern, though, right, Donnie? You've seen him get injured.
It's the injury.
Everyone has. Yeah. That's the only thing that I have knock him on. Like, if he didn't have the injury concern, I would think San Francisco would have just kept him and wouldn't even have gone after McCaffrey.
See, I actually kind of like that he had the injury concern, because I'm like a glutton for punishment sometimes. Like, I like that kind of like gritty guy. Like, obviously, I don't got to tell you guys, I'm a Matthew Stafford guy. Like, I like the guy has that like determination to pick himself off the canvas and be like, I'm going to keep playing. Injuries are part of it. Like, everyone has to come through adversity. So that kind of characteristic just kind of, I root for that. So it wasn't hard for me to get back on the Raheem Mostert trend. But I do understand Donnie's point, saying like, hey, availability does matter when I evaluate talent. But,
by the way, I hate to be that guy, but the rookie who's playing behind Raheem Mostert, it's supposed to be Devon A-Chan, not A-Chain.
I'm going to start calling him Devon if that's what he wants to do.
Get the table.
To be honest, I'm fine with getting a name wrong and being corrected. But this is coming from people who have always called the Kelsey brothers Kelsey and not Kels.
Not Kels, exactly.
You can correct me, but I can't guarantee I'll correct it in my own language. I'll honestly be there.
I'll call him whatever he wants to his face when I meet him. That's all I guarantee.
A-Chain, whatever you want to call him, that's a tough name to pronounce. I could pronounce Michael Humanawanui, but I can't pronounce A-Chain, I guess.
And I guess, like, I've heard so many different people pronounce Bijan Robinson different ways, so you never know.
Yeah, I don't know what's the correct way to pronounce.
You mean you've heard Bijan?
I've literally heard it.
Bijan Roberson?
I feel like I heard it all ago.
Bijan Robinson, yes.
Speaking of transitions and getting things right and wrong, we got a lot wrong this week, but I don't mind it because I think it could have easily went well for us. It just, I really do view this as like a generational slate where it's like you saw 4 teams play extraordinarily well, and if you didn't play those 4 games, you probably didn't do well. And
the Dolphins completely broke the slate. every one of them basically, except the cheap guys on the wide receiver end.
But even then, like it was the Chargers and Vikings, and then Denver and Miami. And I'm okay with that because some people do that. I mean, I know last year people played a lot of the Lions Seahawks, and once that game went crazy, people won money. Guess what? I was one of those people. Yes, partly due to bias because I'm going to play the Lions because I know they're the best. But that's an example of where it paid off for me. This one didn't, and I understand why it didn't, and I don't have a problem with it.
Well, Logan, here's the thing. I had one that I had the stack of Kirk, Hawk, Jefferson, Allen. Did not cash.
Why?
A lot of snowflakes. Outside of that, a lot of snowflakes.
Yeah. And I didn't mean that like in a mechanical way, but I'm just like in your heart, like what did you think you did wrong there?
I have to double check it for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, like when I look at my lineups, it's like I'll look at a specific lineup and be like, okay, when I was building, I was thinking this. I wanted this stack. Then if there's like a mini stack that I put in, it's like, okay, why did I put that mini stack in here instead of a different game? Or why was it those two from that game instead of maybe the chalkier version of that stack?
Right.
I think I was the one who picked Ford and the Cowboys defense in this one. Is that right?
the Cowboys defense fell to us. You just said so.
Yeah, that was like the most expensive defense. So like it just sort of fit in.
Yeah.
Why don't we quickly explain what this lineup is? This was a thought experiment for Evan and for the more just like novice. I'm trying this out. This is the first couple weeks of a new something, and so we did this as a casual experience for these people. So the rules basically were that we weren't going to pay up for anyone. We were going to just stay like
No one over 55.
baseline, yeah, for the whole lineup. This is what you'd expect from a lineup like this. Not that it was bad, but we even did it before the show. Even if you would put Devin Etienne in this lineup, it wouldn't have cashed. For an example.
Yeah.
It's not to say it's not a bad. It's not bad to try something and have that conviction and for it to lose.
You know what it was, Logan? Just finish what I had. This lineup, I mean, I got a lot right in it. I had Allen, Jefferson, Kirk, Tank Dell, Hawk, and I finished off with a Gus Edwards that got hurt. Unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
A Mingo that got hurt. Very unfortunate.
Yeah.
A Miller who snowflaked. Once again. He was just chalk at that point, essentially. And a Titans defense that gave me 5. Like, it most weeks that's good.
You kind of like, because running back hit and like two of them hit majorly, you dudding out on running back, like, because there was like, you could have had Thielen who had 30. You could have had who else had a big game on top of Keenan and Tank. There was a few other guys who hit like 28.
Oh, yeah.
Like Thielen got to 30.
Tyreek
also, Tyreek was fine.
Mike Williams had 28.
Right. Oh yeah, Big Mike, also Coop. Yeah. So it's like you hit good on your stack. You got your wide receivers, but then you went Gus, who I remember, wasn't he like low to mid 5? No, I'm just trying to think pricing. He was like low to mid 5K, and then you punted with the Kendre Miller, who I knew a lot of people were doing at like 4,300.
Yeah.
And then
instead of Ford.
And then, of course, you played Mingo instead of Thielen, who everyone was playing. That's one that got me. I was also playing a lot of, I was more on Mingo and stuff. And
a guy like McKinnon shows up.
That's what we call the galaxy brain right there.
Yeah.
Because Thielen was the play, and he wasn't pulling ownership.
Do you think he
would?
But
to galaxy brain to say, oh, well, I'm just going to play Mingo instead.
I'd play Mingo next week again.
I would still play Mingo.
I honestly think I'd be more willing to play Thielen and the downfield threat of Shark than Mingo coming off the concussion. because Mingo's going to miss practice this week. And a rookie kind of needs the week of practice
That's
to
true.
be familiar with
That
him.
makes sense now, Gov, but I'm saying, like, if I didn't know what I know now, I'd still play Mingo over Adam Thielen. I think Thielen got there largely due to Mingo being rolled out. Mingo had like 7 targets before he got rolled out. So
Yeah, but Shark was also getting in play. Like, I think that would have been a much more spread out game, maybe. Like, maybe I agree Thielen probably doesn't get to 30.
Well, we have
but Thielen was still going to get his targets too. And that's when I mean Galaxy Brain, it's like the reasoning to play Mingo is to yes, we're chasing sort of the same profile, but there's a reason to not just play the higher projected guy. It's usually ownership or some sort of leverage.
And when did Mingo get hurt
this week?
I believe the second quarter.
Second quarter, yeah. So
second quarter, and he had 6 targets.
Yeah, he was on pace to do well. Thielen ended up with 15 targets or something. I have to look exactly. He ended up with a good game too. And I agree. I think Mingo and him more split. I think that wide receiver core is a little more split if Mingo's in the whole time. But we were trying to find a good play in Mingo because we saw he could get that heavy target share compared to all the stats. I'm not saying that the stats didn't say Mingo was a bad play. I'm saying sometimes, especially in DFS, if you don't need that much leverage, then you don't really need to make that play. And it would have been one thing if we'd have seen Thielen coming in with ownership. As okay, him and Tank Dell are the 2 highest owned guys. But no, it was Tank Dell clearly, and then people were more willing to play River Craycraft than they were Adam Thielen. So you didn't need to play Mingo instead of all of those guys. You could have just played Thielen.
Here's my argument to that, though. In the weeks before, Thielen had 1 touchdown, 9 targets in week 2, 2 targets in week 1. As to where Mingo, he had
no touchdowns,
and
the same target share.
And 5 targets.
Yeah, so close to the same target share. If you actually look at percentage target share, close to the same. And I have to look it up, but I'm pretty sure their catchable balls were close too.
They were.
So it's they looked very even. That's the thing.
Did.
Before coming in, Mingo and Thielen looked dead even, to be honest. But Mingo was cheaper and pulling less ownership. But that also didn't really matter because neither of them were pulling any ownership. So it's in my mind, if I review, it's Mingo was a unnecessary leverage play.
It wasn't because I think I used all my salary or close enough to it where it would have made a difference.
And Gov, I think our number 1 lineup has a Andy Dalton Mingo stack, just to drive home the point.
It does.
So people can see I think this lineup wins a lot of times. But we are going to win with a 130 or 140 one of the weeks, I feel like. Because other things will break our way. And we'll remember, you got to remember.
Yeah, again, all the guys in this contest, this is a large field contest. So, anyone over 18, 19% owned, that's basically chalk. Those were guys everyone was playing. So, guys like Walker and guys like Addison, everyone was playing them.
I mean, the lineup my best lineup had 172 points total. That's really good. And it didn't.
It's really good for most.
Yeah, that's basically was the floor in a lot of places. Yeah.
Right.
The min cash floor.
It's good for some weeks, Donnie, but not this week. And
not this week.
This was the week where the chalk attacked. All the 15+% guys who a lot of people were playing. Ken Walker, Keenan Allen, your Jeffersons and Cousins and all of those guys. Stroud and Tank were all a lot of those guys, they hit. Now, some didn't. People were playing Nico. He didn't really hit.
Addison didn't hit.
Addison didn't hit from that game. All right. Ford was a higher owned running back. He hits. So, getting contrarian this week. So, maybe I'm overthinking it because we will need to get contrarian in the future.
Yeah.
But I also know that I've lost a lot of slates because of the Galaxy Brain. So, Going forward, I might not galaxy brain it so much. Like, it's one thing to like play Robert Woods off of Tank Dell. Tank Dell's going to be super chalky, and Robert Woods was getting close to the same targets, not anymore. But I get the reasoning, and I'm not saying even like we finding a play like Mingo isn't a good one. I do think, like, especially last week when there was a lot of chalk condensing in places, we didn't need to play Mingo. We could have just played. We knew Thielen at worst was probably going to be the same as Mingo. It's just Mingo had higher upside. But we didn't need to leverage that upside or leverage ownership in any place.
Well,
so, like, the only reason to play him would have been in your scenario. The only reason to play him is if you needed the $500 to go from Thielen to Mingo.
Another example, just to use a different, like, same idea, just different players, is Michael Pittman versus Josh Downs. Very similar price range to Mingo, has a higher upside, but you got a guy in Pittman who just catches things. He's probably not going to break the slate for you, but he's going to stay consistent.
That's kind of not like Pittman's also like $2,000 more expensive than
right.
whereas Thielen and Mingo were basically able to be played in most lineups interchangeably. Now $500 can make a difference, but you might just be able to go down at defense and get up to Thielen at that point.
But can I make a really good point that, like, that's why I value this podcast. And like I've said this off air, I don't care if 5 more people watch this or 20,000 more people watch this by week 17. The guys in this room make me smarter, and they challenge me to build lineups I would not build myself. And like, that's the cool thing about this, that, like, of course, DraftKings has terms and services. You don't want to break those. You don't want to, like, build lineups together and like do all the nasty nonsense that some people do. But having a community of DFS people to keep you in check, or just give you different ideas, or keep you updated on injury information, or just like how me and Evan are fans of the Lions and the Bears, and just having that, like, beat reporter kind of, hey, Evan, what do you think of this lineup? Hey, Evan, is Cole Kmet like a viable fantasy, tight end this week, or is he just like a hometown hero guy, And I think that's very valuable, just for somebody else that you trust to look over your lineup and say, hey, is this a good lineup, or am I getting in my head too much about this?
Here's the thing. I remember after the game, I messaged our group message.
Mm-hmm.
I said, I was disappointed. I was like, I might need to reevaluate my process going into 4. We come in here, and I finally take a breath and look at the lineup, and I really don't think any of my plays exactly were bad. They didn't hit.
They don't always hit. Like, I look at all of our lineups and, like, knowing the pillars we tried to build and knowing that, like, we still have good plays. If you could probably build
even the random Nelson Aguilar one's not bad.
There is one.
This was a high variance week. Like, honestly, like, any week you have a 30-point defense is going to be a high variance week.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Well, there is one play that I really didn't like that I'll highlight quickly, and then we'll move on to our next segment, because I was able to talk to Drew Dinkmeyer, who has been a professional DFS player for a while, hit big again. He's a big NBA and a big NFL guy. And so he's going to allow us to break down some of his clips of his lineups, and then we can react to that. But before we do that, I just want to close. I do hate one thing that I did this week on my own personal lineups, and it was playing Joshua Kelly. And it's not Joshua Kelly in a vacuum. Like, because our lineup made sense, to Gov's point, is everyone was playing a lot of wide receivers from that game. And our process build, if you guys want to even go back and watch how we built that lineup, we weren't playing Keenan Allen. We were not playing Justin Jefferson. We didn't have a stack, with a quarterback in that game. So the idea was to play, a guy that was going to be around a lot of points. There was going to be a lot of points scored in that game. If they don't go through the air, they're going to go to the starting running back, and he's cheaper. The reason I hate that play is because he was 26% owned. That's why I don't like it.
Well, we didn't expect that, I don't think.
That's what I'm saying. That was bad process for me not to see that coming. That's what I think I should have paid more attention to.
Yeah, our whole idea of that lineup in specific was to play the games, but not play the chalky guys.
Right, and we played and Joshua Kelly ended up being chalk. And like, had I known he was going to be that high owned, I wouldn't have played him. You know.
And before we get into the next segment, did we want to review our game picks from last week?
Yes.
That's a good. Thank you, Evan. Because
I was trying to slide it in there twice now. I couldn't get it in.
That's good. No, because I always try to review this on the wrong day. So take it away, Donna. Did I get it right?
All right. Let me double pull it up for a second. This time I'm prepared. I won't cut out. So, thank you guys. It took me 3 weeks to finally get it, but I did it. For our group pick, we had the Rams at +2.5. That failed barely by half a point, but it failed. Bringing us to 0-3. So we, as a group, we need to really step up our game. This is not looking good for us.
We're like the Bears.
All right, I'll start giving you my good ones. Fuck.
It is funny, Don. You laid that out like an English instructor or something, like we're trying to disappoint you.
No, I'm kind of disappointed.
We're not mad. We're just disappointed.
Logan had the Panthers at +5 and the Chargers at +1, putting him at 2-4 for his picks. Better than the spread for our group spread. Logan, what are you holding down on us? Gov had the Eagles at -5.5 and the Lions at -3, putting him up to 5-1, a commanding 5-1 lead, might I add.
I told you. I'll give you the tie next week. You get the tie next week. My picks were Titans at +3.5. I am never picking anything Titans ever again. And the Steelers +2.5, which puts me at 2-4 for the year, tied with Logan. And last, Evan had the Bills at -6 and the Cowboys at -13, bringing him to a solid 3-3.
All right, I'll take that.
Early season.
Listen. I came in last year after having the greatest start probably you could have.
Yes, but you were being chased by me.
Yeah.
Sometimes you don't have to be faster than everyone. You don't have to be faster than the bear. You just have to be faster than everyone else. But I'm the bear. You have to be faster than me.
Well,
I just don't want to come in last. That's my goal.
We have a fourth guy here this time, so we'll have a shot.
Let's look at a guy who was the polar bear. He was the king of the jungle, the guy who eats the seal. Drew Dinkmeyer won everything, and he was kind enough to break it down for the YouTubers, because there are people in this industry that feel like their process is so important they won't share anything. So this man has won NBA, he's won NFL. He has a tout site that you have to pay for to get access to. Not only did he do this for free and like a lineup builder show, not in depth, of course. It was only 17 minutes, and of course it's probably somewhat due to promotion. Like they can now use this as promotion to get you to sign up for their site. So I understand all that. So reaching out to him, I didn't know if he would actually respond to me. Not only did he responded to me, said like go for it, was very encouraging, wants people to know the process. So not only did he lay it out, but he said that we could kind of piggyback off of some of his points. I don't think any of you have listened to these clips, so I condensed some of them, and I was hoping we could get reactions because I think he made some points that we would agree with. Are we ready?
Sure.
We're good, right? You guys can see it? Let me know for some reason if you guys can't hear it, but it should be good to go. I'll just start with the first one here. I don't even know where this is, but it doesn't matter because this is more process-based talk than anything. But here we go with the first quote.
was most direct leverage off of Tyreek Hill and whatever to his stacks or whatever people use there. Durham Smythe, who's going to be chalky as well. But I was already playing Herbert as leverage off of Kelly. So it was playing within the chalkier situations, but levering off of the highest owned plays in those chalkier game environments. And I think that's something that you can still play chalk and use it to lever off of other pretty good chalk, just generally. Like Tyreek Hill was a really good play. I think Josh Kelly was a fine play, even at relatively large ownership. But if you're playing the Herbert team, I don't think you want Kelly in those instances. And if you're playing the Herbert team and you're already leveraging off Kelly, you're probably gonna have a hard time affording Tyreek Hill. You might as well leverage off of him with Raheem Mostert. And that's kind of how I got here on this build.
All right. The elephant in the room, Dink, is this whole defense thing, because for years, we have thought, and I personally have thought, that playing defenses into massive ownership is just flat.
It was most direct leverage off of Tyreek.
It cut off there, but he was just saying how you're flat dead, basically. It's not a good thing to do. Now, I think there was a lot of good nuggets there. Does anyone want to have an instant reaction? Because obviously I watched the whole episode, so it did.
No, that's a good thought process to build your lineups. Like, you should be, like I said, you should be looking for leverage. You don't want to go too far and galaxy brain it, but like that's what you want to do, is you want to find that leverage. And like in the case of Mingo, that's kind of a galaxy brain, because truthfully, low-owned Thielen was leverage off of everyone playing Ken Walker on the other side, or everyone wanting to play Miles Sanders, like, because the running backs were pulling ownership in that game. So playing Thielen or playing Metcalf was already the leverage you needed, whereas playing Mingo is like super large field. You need something to hit, taking a shot on a rookie early. Not that it's a bad way. Like, I think our mindset was right, but I think we might have went too far there.
Yeah. I think that's
trying to get away from chalk.
I think that's something we can learn, though. It's like we can look at a chalk kind of construction and then say, okay, but even if this game is chalky, there's no way you can play both chalk quarterbacks. There's no way you can play both. Most lineups will not play both chalk running backs. So if we did that, we'd be different. Or if we play the lesser of, the chalky, like, there are ways to get different. And that's kind of what he did with Herbert. He knew Herbert was going to be high owned. He went ahead and stacked it with, Cousins, still got tons of exposure there. Anyone else have a comment before we go on to the next quote?
Nope, I'm ready for the next one.
All right.
Ultimately, like Josh Allen, yes, he'll take some sacks and turnovers, but he largely is able to use his legs to avoid more sacks. Sam Howell, him, Justin Fields so far have just been taking a ton of sacks on a per drop back basis, and so is Tannehill. So those were situations where I thought the ceiling was really, really elevated. And certainly a chalk defense in the past I would have been more suspicious of, but the Sims have helped ease some of those concerns for me.
Last thing that I wanted to talk.
Ultimately, like Josh Allen.
So there he's talking about mostly, and I included this for you, Johnny, because I know defense is always really big for you, and it's kind of one of my blind spots. And his point there was he actually wants the quarterback that's going to stand in the pocket, because he's like, they're basically an easier target, and a lot of people.
So you want to play against the Panthers and Andy Dalton, essentially.
Right.
What are you talking about? He was scrambling all over the place. They made sure to mention in the broadcast how much he's appreciative of his athleticism and how he can scramble. Ideally, you want that quarterback that's not going to scramble, that's going to stay in the pocket, that's either going to take a sack or throw a pick in a bad situation.
And I guess I was wrong, because I've always been the mindset that like targeting Lamar Jackson sometimes is a smart move, because he's going to scramble.
You play Tampa against Jameis this week.
Jalen Hurts. Or Logan played against Jalen Hurts last week.
So, Evan, we haven't heard from you yet. Do you think the Buffalo Bills was just a lucky play by this guy, or do you think like his theory makes sense? Like, what are you taking away from just the idea that, you want to target a quarterback that doesn't really move much? Like, I guess you're new to it. So, like, when you think about defense, are you just picking one on random? Are you picking one that fits?
I'm picking my defense based on overall talent on the roster, which is why I picked up the Steelers in a lot of my regular fantasy football leagues that aren't necessarily DFS. But even in a DFS, I want TJ Watt, I want Hightower, I want
Micah
the
Parsons.
chances. Micah Parsons, even from the Cowboys, exactly. So I don't give a shit about what the quarterback does in the pocket, out of the pocket, or whatever. I want the talent. I don't want to overthink it.
See, now, I mean, I disagree. I actually really like this guy's method, and it's now that I've heard it, it's definitely going to be in my mind at some points. It might not be the make or break, but it's going to be something that I'm going to be thinking about now.
I'm gonna try, but I know Gov is with me on this one, and maybe this is just because we're running some of the same circles.
Like, I'm not going to play the Bears defense because they're playing a statue. That's
maybe not, but I will play the Bears because they're the cheapest defense and they fit with all the rest of the offensive pieces I like.
I mean, if anything, doesn't that kind of prove my point? Because my Bears defense don't even have good pass rushers anymore.
Yeah, but that's to my point. Maybe that's a weakness of mine, Evan, is I think defense is so variant that I don't really pay any attention to defense. I just play whatever fits.
When you're playing an entire unit, it's very fluid. That's why you see a lot of people in fantasy football hate defenses and kickers, because it's just very fluid. You can't count on it, similar to touchdowns and injuries. Right. But like I said earlier, I just give me the talent and I'll hope for the best. What were you going to say, Donnie?
I mean, I 100% agree. Having especially one superior pass rusher is huge. That's always been in my mindset when I'm picking a defense. But I feel like if you can adapt to your strategy a little bit, because I don't think Logan can ever help himself defensively. He's always going to stick with that strategy, and it's worked for him. So there's not a problem with it. There's multiple ways to win. We've seen that by now. But
it's not that I always will play the cheapest defense, but I will play the best defense that I can fit in without changing any of my offensive.
Right.
So there's only a minute left between the two clips I have up. I'm going to play both of them, and we'll get our closing thoughts on both, and then we can transition to our Rainmakers team and just kind of give people a precursor into week 4 and try to keep this within about an hour. So here we go.
Onto Elijah Moore here, Dink, at 2%.
Yeah, I was really trying to get to Cooper. I just couldn't find Cooper. And then I basically, the iterations that I was playing around with were those last few spots were with Kirk and Moore. And I was just trying to figure out, I kind of wanted exposure to the Jags passing game. Kirk was the cheapest way to get there. And then it just kind of left me with Moore, who's on the same team as Cooper, same thesis as the play, and has a big talent profile that I knew was going to be under-owned. So I ended up there. Looking back, I think the nut combination, obviously with results, but also I think from a build perspective that would have made sense, would have been Thielen and Kenneth Walker, because they would have been a mini correlation in that game. And Thielen was just going to have an ownership cap on him just because he's an old guy, nobody wants to play him. And he would have been leverage off of Tank Dell, who was highly owned in that range. And Kenneth Walker had one of the massive running back ceilings that I like. So I think if I would have seen that lineup, I might have pulled the trigger on that one and could have been even better week. But Moore was mostly I was trying
to.
And I apologize. I thought I had it big enough screen that you guys could see, but that is the lineup there, just in case you guys were wondering. This proves that you can have one miss. I mean, he had more in the lineup. Like he said, he wanted Cooper.
Even Kirk wasn't great.
And he's, he won, yes, but I like that he's still looking back on his process.
Right. Had Kirk and Moore, which he was the 2v2 he was thinking, just been the slightly chalkier 2v2, but still not very chalky because, as he was saying there, Thielen wasn't going to pull that much ownership, even though Walker was. You probably do that, and then you have 2 30-point guys instead of the 2 12-point guys he had. He would have had a much bigger day, yeah.
And to that point, Gov, now that if St. Mingo is out, right, and everyone saw what Thielen did, now Thielen would potentially maybe be a bad play unless you stacked it correctly, because the ownership is obviously going to spike. Now, that doesn't mean you can't play him. You just got to play him differently than you did this week. One more clip, and then we'll continue on here.
The thing that I thought about was how much of an ownership difference there would be between Herbert and Cousins. And I thought that Cousins being cheaper, being the cash game target at quarterback, I thought you could see him get as high as 18 to 20 in smaller field stuff. I thought Herbert, the ceiling on Herbert ownership was probably 10 to 12. So I felt immediately there, I'm getting a little bit of a layer of differentiation. And if I'm differentiating from that perspective, well, I want to also leverage. And so I want to leverage by playing Madison over the Cousins. The Cousins teams are mostly going to have Jefferson, most likely. So I'm immediately kind of, even though I'm playing within this really chalk game, I am pulling a little bit at the leverage strings by playing. The thing that I thought about was how much of an ownership difference there would be between Herbert.
So I have to say, I want to do more of this where we like look at other people's lineups and we get some of their theories. I know some fantasy people, so maybe I can pull some strings and get this to happen. This guy is way above me in terms of how long he's played and the experience. He was just so gracious with being able to do this. If you guys want to watch the full breakdown, it is with Adam Levitan at Establish the Run. Drew Dinkmeyer does work with him in full transparency. They are partners. Drew mainly does NBA content. He is probably the best NBA projections leader. Obviously does a ton of premium NFL as well, but NBA really is his niche and has an awesome podcast along with Mike Gallagher of ETR as well. So I just want to shout him out. Thank you for letting us do this because, I mean, so many people will be like, oh, this is a small podcast. I don't know what they're going to do with this material. I'm just going to forget about it. He actually reached out, after winning all this money. So I do appreciate it. Any thoughts on that? Because I do think he dropped some good nuggets there.
I honestly, I really love that first clip where he's talking about that strategy. I think I don't know
I knew
if
you would love that one. That's why I put it.
That's my favorite of all the things. I love that he's still trying to reevaluate what went wrong in the lineup. I don't, obviously he knows what he's doing, but after the week's over, he's still doing the same things as us. He's still reevaluating what went wrong, what went right.
Yeah, thank you, Adam and Evan. It's good to see a fellow Evan on that podcast. Evan Power.
Yeah. Evan Silva, by the way, is a Chicago Bears fan, like our Evan. So
Look at that.
Small world, isn't it?
I'm telling you, if you haven't watched Evan Silva, he is worth the price of admission. Just alone, that is good. Gov, any closing thoughts on that? Because I love your process theory ideas, and you always bring people some interesting ideas. Nothing?
Not much, honestly. Like I like Dink is a smart guy. So like he was saying a lot of stuff that like I try to take into account when I'm building my lineups.
Yeah.
Don't mind me. I'm trying to see if I have enough rush cards to fill out this lineup, and I don't.
Well, we haven't announced it.
Oh wait, my Jimmy G that's in rare is actually a rush card. Okay, so I might have to think about that.
You guys tell me because I'm getting old, and today was a long day. Did we tell the people about Trevor Lawrence?
I think skimmed on it. I think we skimmed on it. I don't think we really showed.
I think
Gov showed his portfolio. Gov showed his.
Yeah, I showed the whole portfolio. He's not on the slate, so like.
Yeah.
We have we showed our pack. We know what we're playing, barring us deciding between Van Jefferson and Mingo.
No, but I mean, we told the people that we picked up a Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah.
And we played it last week. Yeah.
Now, I gotta say, I still love that we picked him up, and that's what I'm talking about when it comes to this lineup with ETR or our Rainmakers. It's a portfolio. It's not supposed to work out week one and then go home. Like, if that was the case, we would attack it much differently. Like, I would have bet probably $100 in week one if it was only a 1 week thing, But this is a long-term investment, We don't want to spend all the money in 1 week, even if we win. I'm not going to spend all my money on week 4. I don't know what happens in week 4. So even if I win a ton of money, I don't want to spend it all. Like, remember, clip me if you want to. And speaking of which, while we close up shop, we do have a bunch of clips, by the way, from our prediction show. In the next couple of weeks, I was going to do a almost mid-season kind of review where we can go through some of our season-long projections, and then Evan can really laugh at some of the thoughts that we had even before Evan was part of the show, and you can get that live reaction because I don't think you've heard all of those thoughts. I will say we were right about a lot of things. I'll give people the teaser. There was a moment where Donnie and Gov were talking in our season-long projection. Again, you guys can go back and watch the whole thing. where Donnie said he didn't think the Cardinals would get very many wins early on. And Gus says, "What, don't you think Colt McCoy is going to get a win for the Cardinals?" So just like gems like that happen and throughout, and it just shows you how quickly.
Well, I was wrong. It was Josh Dobbs.
Yeah, well, exactly. It just shows you how quickly the season changes. Like
Nobody predicted that Colt McCoy wouldn't even make the roster. Nobody thought that, I don't think.
Well, that's what I mean, though, is like even the plays. So like Evan brought it up, so I'll go full circle before we close up shop tonight. Justin Fields, right? He's saying, oh, everyone else, even Bears fans are saying like, oh, Justin Fields is a bust. But guess what? If Justin Fields goes out and scores 30 fantasy points for the next 5 weeks, everyone's going to want to play him. Like you're on Rainmakers right now, Gov. You know what's about to happen if Fields goes through what he did a couple of seasons ago, where he went on like a 5-week span.
Not last year. It wasn't even a couple seasons ago. Last year.
It was last year, wasn't it? And it was like 5 weeks where it's like you played him or you lost. And that could happen. And that's the thing. It could happen on a bad team. Like,
and I don't think last year we even touched Justin Fields. Am I mistaken on that?
No, I don't think we played him not any of the 3 weeks he did big. I don't think we played him at all.
Oh, this season, no, we haven't played him.
No, last season too. I'm pretty sure we didn't touch him as a podcast.
I hope we did.
I'm pretty sure we didn't.
If we did, it was that 4th week when he actually shit the bed.
Yeah, I think it might have been. But like, and that's the thing is you can't stay on your priors. You got to be able to adjust with the game and be willing to be wrong sometimes. So why don't I do this for the last couple minutes here? We talked about reviewing. We talked some interesting stuff. What's something that you learned from this week or in the last couple of weeks that you can apply for week 4 especially? I got a couple things if someone's drawing a blank. But I like to open this up at the end of the reviews. Something we've learned that we can carry into next week.
I mean, from this week?
Or any week. I mean, you can even look back in week 1. If you know your trend, Donnie, go ahead and say it.
I really don't know how much I know I've learned stuff. I guess haven't really. I'm learning as I go, But I will say, from based off past history, there is something I know I will be playing this week.
Mm-hmm.
Kyle Pitts will be in a lineup.
I hope you play the London Showdown.
Yeah. I mean,
this is the honest truth. There is a rumor that Taylor Heineke could be starting in place of Ritter very, very soon. They even mentioned on the broadcast for what that's worth. I mean, I did hear that rumor going in because obviously that being the game, the Falcons were the team that I played last week, so I did pay attention to more of the beat reporters. Apparently that was in the rumblings, but then they mentioned it on the broadcast even. So,
see, I never bought into the whole Desmond Ritter thing. I didn't see it at all. So I'm not shocked. I don't know if you guys like Ritter. I don't think he's good at all. I don't know if he's good enough to really be a consistent backup on a team.
I think he's a backup. I just think we know what he is, and I don't think he's a starting caliber. But my point is when you see a change like Heineke, it could be anyone. It could, just name a different quarterback. They play different skill sets, so that offense is going to change. Like Heineke doesn't.
And they're completely different quarterbacks. I mean,
yeah,
you might see more Cordell Patterson if Heineke plays.
It's hard to judge a Desmond Ritter who's only played 7 NFL games so far. Has he been bad in all of them? Well, I don't know about completely.
I don't know about all of them. But
he's been very disappointing so far in 7 NFL games. But a lot of rookie quarterbacks, well, he's a sophomore now, but a lot of young quarterbacks do stink in their first 2 seasons. So I think that's going to be up to the Falcons at this point.
Do they, though? I don't think they stink nowadays. I think you see flashes by now. In 7 games, we should have seen a flash by now.
That was the other point I was going to make too, is that I haven't watched enough Falcons football to be able to know, are there flashes from Ritter?
We've seen Mac Jones' first year, we saw flashes. Justin Fields, we've seen flashes. Like, you kind of should have seen something worthwhile by now.
Well, to close on your point, Donnie, the problem I'm seeing, and like I want to believe in Ritter, but the more the Falcons have opened up the pass game to actually give him a chance, because the first season I would tell you was Arthur Smith just like beholden to the run game and just not opening up the pass at all. But now that they have given Ritter back-to-back 30 attempt games and he's looked worse, like it's that regression of like from week 2 to 3, the passes went up and his efficiency went down. Like, it just feels like he hasn't, so that's what would scare me.
I mean, they played Marcus Mariota last year before he got hurt too, which is probably a terrible comparison to Ritter, but even he couldn't do anything with this awful Arthur Smith offense.
This is true, and I don't think Mariota's terrible.
I don't either. I think he's just real average.
And let's be clear, I think Arthur Smith is terrible.
Yep.
Like,
I definitely think he's not good.
I will celebrate.
Okay, well, I'll say this. I think he'd be great if you were having him as like an offensive coordinator running the game, but he should not be the guy in charge. I
think he would be an all-time coach in the 80s. Not really.
Oh, agreed.
But it could be possible.
But Donnie, you mentioned it, how you didn't want to be beholden to an idea. You said you are enjoying, being flexible and having that evolution to your DFS game. That's what Arthur Smith hasn't shown. He hasn't shown that ability to kind of be able to be both things. And Donnie dropped out here, but we were going to move on anyways. Evan, anything from the last couple of weeks that you want to apply for week 4? So like when we go into a lineup build, like, hey, keep this in mind, guys.
I haven't been able to come up with any one particular thing that I've learned that I want to point out in this moment. But I mean, I will say that a big part of the reason why I hopped onto this podcast for this season, even though I'm not a DFS guy at all, I'm a dynasty guy, is to at least help me think of better ways to play fantasy football that I wouldn't think to do otherwise, being that I don't even touch DFS. So it's good to hear the minds of 3 other people who play DFS to keep me honest. Make sure that even my own biases stay out of the way.
And truly, I got to give you your flowers. You don't have to say any more tonight because your opening segment was pretty much spot on. And that's why I can't speak for the rest of the guys. I'll let them speak. I'm sure they would agree, though. That's why we value you. It's because sometimes in this DFS landscape, you can get a hive mind. You can say, oh, I built so many lineups. I play in this one single entry every year. This is my contest. You almost get an ownership or a pride or an ego, as you mentioned. You said ego tonight. That was a perfect word of like, I've done this for X amount of years. I don't need to change. I know what I'm doing, and just bringing in people that have like a different appreciation for the game. It's funny how symbiotically that can have a positive on both relationships. I'm sure we've taught you some things about the way to view football that you didn't expect and vice versa. And I wouldn't have built lineups without you the same way this year. I can guarantee you that.
I appreciate all that feedback as well.
Especially the cheap lineup.
Yes.
Well, I mean, that was
I'm going to be honest with you, Evan. That's a lineup I've wanted to build for a long time, but based on what I knew from past knowledge, I knew it probably wasn't smart, so I just didn't want to say it. But it was something I wanted to try.
Gov, you've been playing for a long time. I think you've probably been playing maybe longer than me. Shouldn't we do that with some of our free lineups, though? Shouldn't we do that with just some of this? Like, we always say it in practice, and that's why I built that damn lineup, is because we always say, like, oh, be smart with your money. Have fun, enjoy yourself. Like, watch football with friends, family, like, create this environment of people that you want to be around. And that's what this podcast is about. But then we don't always apply it because we're stressing, who do we play, Justin Herbert or Kirk Cousins? Well, guess what? They're both good plays. So just play the one that makes sense. But wasn't it cool to just like let something go and just have fun? Like I enjoyed that.
I mean, it was a good like trying to figure out a way to actually
And honestly,
spend the money.
I imagine there was a way it worked. I mean, if you
I imagine you could build a base and then just try to fill in with your favorite projected point guy,
Right.
That's what I think.
and make the lineup better.
No,
That's
but
what-
like in the hypothetical where if we for some reason got on, well, not for some reason, if we were on Tank Dell, Thielen, and I'm trying to think of another guy realistically we could have gotten to.
Keenan.
Well,
Or are
I'm
you
saying
thinking
with-
cheap guy?
I'm thinking there was another cheap guy that went off that we probably could have gotten onto.
Mike Wilson would have been mine. I mean, I don't know how well he did, but he did get like 8 points. So I don't know. Like
Rondale had
Nelson,
that big one. That
Nelson
would've hit-
Aguilar had 8 points, but
right. So, but what to Gus' point though is like maybe that's what we take is like, hey, we should experiment more with a base of cheap guys, maybe even a pool of guys.
because we usually start out with our expensive guys and see what we fit in.
right.
So maybe next week we do it reverse order and really
those,
try to think.
Those are the lessons you can take, and that's why reviews like this are important. It's not just to say, "Hey guys, Devin Etienne scored a lot of points this week. He was a good play." Like anyone could do that.
No shit.
Right. Anyone
Why
could
was
do
he a
that.
good play? Was he a good play? Did everyone?
I
get
still don't
fucking
think he
lucky
was a
with
good
it?
play. I really don't.
Donnie Achman being out, I can see why you would get there. Not to say you needed to get there. It wasn't a must-have.
I'm sorry, it's a galaxy brain play. It's literally like that's all that was. It hit, yes, but it was galaxy brain.
I have to agree because Mostert is the one that's carrying the most of that. No pun intended. The snap percentages.
Correct, but I would if I was going to play devil's advocate. I'm not saying I wasn't on it, so it's for me. But I did mention him in best ball because he had Olympic. You guys can go back and look when we were discussing a late round picks.
Well,
we ended up taking the best one, so don't get me wrong.
I mean, but again, best ball and DFS are not the same. Like the reason we took him in best ball was we thought Mostert can get hurt,
Well, we didn't
or
take him in
his
best ball.
talent
We-
would
we
show
did-
out and he could take over the job by the end of the year.
Yeah.
But like that doesn't mean we think he's playing week 3 in their home opener.
Well, that's my point, guys. Is we actually talked Puka. We were debating, between a guy like ATN because we needed running backs, but my point was that ATN had Olympic level speed. So, like, if your reason for playing him this week was, hey, he is the second guy and he could break one big, and he has Olympic level speed, I'd be okay with that.
Here's the thing, and here's why I think it's a bad play.
Mhm.
Realistically, if it's not, I think at the time it was 63 to 20 or whatever it was.
Right.
He's probably not playing still. If it's a close game, they're going their best guy, Mostert. And he doesn't get a 60-yard touchdown to put him up 70 to 20. Like that's a big difference point wise.
It is.
That's a
But
home run lucky shot.
Exactly. All those. I'm not shocked if he gets 50 yards and a touchdown. That's not crazy. That's something that could have happened.
Who else did that? They had their extra
Lots
wide
of
receiver
guys.
come in. Meta World Chosen came in and caught a touchdown. It's like, yeah.
Chosen.
That wasn't possible.
Robbie Chosen. I don't know. Is it Robbie Chosen or Chosen
It's
Anderson?
Chosen Anderson. It's Chosen
It's
Anderson.
Meta World Chosen in my mind.
Yeah. Speaking of the basketball correlation, we will be doing some basketball. We will be doing some NBA content here shortly. I'm excited for that. But just to close on this idea is like, but you are playing, Donnie, for that home run of ATN. But to expect 52 fantasy points, get the hell out of here. No one.
It was past a home run play. I stand by this. Our Mingo play was better than that play. I legitimately feel that way.
Yeah.
Can I also throw this one in here too for the best ball format? What are HN shareholders going to do if Jonathan Taylor ends up being traded to the Dolphins before Halloween this year, which is the trade deadline.
Oh, best ball, you can't do anything about it.
Exactly.
Well, that's exactly what I was going to say. Just because he was a good play this week doesn't mean.
And at that time when we drafted, that was a very big possibility of Taylor going to the Dolphins.
And let's be honest, if you told me the information on what I know now,
Or Dalvin Cook, to be fair. Let me add that too.
But
True.
even with Cup coming back, even with Cooper Cup, Puka is definitely a thing. Like we got
Puka will get snaps with Cup coming back.
We got somewhat lucky on that, obviously, like projection wise. Like, of course, we didn't expect this, but that was a safer bet. That was a smarter bet, even though he didn't have a 52-point game this week. So there it is in a vacuum. Gov, any last minute thoughts for week 3 before we move into week 4?
This is week 4 is usually the last week where things can kind of go wild. Usually after this,
September is the crazy month of the NFL,
and it's only crazy because we have expectations.
Mm-hmm.
After this month, we kind of know what teams are.
I disagree.
Now,
we know what teams will go for.
We know what the base of every team is. Now it's just how do they adjust matchup wise against each other.
Good point.
Like we know the bad teams will probably start to get worse at this point.
Yes.
The bad teams
they'll start to use the bad teams will either get worse or try new things. And the good teams will get more players involved, but basically still do their same stuff.
The best team we don't know enough about, DFS-wise, that is Kansas City.
Or the Packers, because they've been so hurt.
I don't think they're we're talking about a good team. Like the Packers are probably a middle of the pack team at best. And we got to see if that is, and we have to see that if is the case. If
that pun went ignored.
I don't know if he meant to do it, but middle of the pack was so good. You said middle of the pack for the Packers.
Oh, yeah. Okay, sure, yeah.
The two NFC
did not mean that. Whatever, pack, whatever.
The two NFC North guys just kind of no-showed that, and Dottie just couldn't contain it.
But see, in my mind, you have to do something like they're not going to be the stinky cheese at the bottom of the damn league. They're probably going to be somewhere above that. Yeah. That's a punt.
You know, here's the thing. They're blue cheese before it's aged properly. That's what they are. Like there's potential there.
That made no sense. Blue cheese should be rotten. Huh?
Yeah.
No. Here's the thing. It's getting its way to be the blue cheese. It's gonna be good eventually. Well, good. I don't like cheese, but some people.
I'm trying to save you here, Donnie. Let me save you. You know, Evan's been talking about all night not giving quarterbacks enough chance. Maybe Jordan Love is the example of why you don't give up on a quarterback too early. He has really good so far.
Did the Packers know though? I think the Packers knew what they had in Love, and we just weren't buying it.
It's a deeper, more complex thing than that because the Green Bay Packers have had a system that's been working and in place for way more than 30 years, starting with, I mean, at least in my lifetime, with Brett Favre and then Aaron Rodgers and now Jordan Love. They knew exactly what to do with Love to let him sit there for 2 years, learn the playbook, learn the system with his skill set, and then you stick him in and he's doing okay with it so far. That's how other teams should be treating their first-round quarterbacks.
I'm very impressed with Jordan Love this year.
He came back after a 17.
He's doing a good job. He's not just okay, in my opinion. Yes, maybe as a quarterback he is, but
that's what I meant.
We do got to get out of here, though. But I want to circle back on Gov's last point just really quickly. So week 1 we overreact, right? Evan talked about that whether last week. You can go back because I do think we have a lot.
Was it last week that he said that, or was it a couple weeks ago?
It might have been a couple. My point is we have a lot of evergreen content. If you guys want to go back,
come on,
and listen to all the shows, we truly do. We tend to ramble just like now, but what I'm getting at is go.
Yeah, ramble this, ramble that.
You made a good point though because what ends up happening is people get excited, right? And no one knows what's going to happen, so that's exciting. And then you watch week 1, you're like, well, maybe they just had a bad matchup. And then we watch week 2. This is kind of like you said the last week, and now we got information, we got data, we got people like are going to really dive into, target shares and air yards.
Well, I do have an exercise I want to do before we get out of here because you guys made me do this a lot last year.
Okay, let's end on this, Johnny. What do you got?
I don't know if Evan knows the prices for this upcoming week, but A-Chain was what? 5K last week? I believe it was 5K last week.
Yes, he was. I know what he is this week.
Okay. Evan, what do you think his price will be up to this week?
I think it's going to be severely inflated, but I don't think it's going to go too high because it seems like the draft, whoever's behind the numbers at DraftKings seems to be relatively reasonable. I think it's going to be roughly between. Should I give an exact number or a range?
Give a range, but no more than like $500.
Yeah, no more than $500.
Because I was thinking somewhere between like 6,600 and 6,800.
Okay, and you're basing that basically just on the prices of other running backs you've seen on the slate and what you think they're going to do to price him up after that game?
Like, I think he's going to be treated like an RB2, but with RB1 upside. And I think that's relatively where those running backs are priced. Am I wrong?
Well, I mean, that would be like a Dylan or something like that. Yeah, those guys are usually priced in like the 6K range. Yeah, lower 6 usually.
What would higher 6 be?
That's like Ken Walker. That's like ETN with 69. That's like you're maybe not getting 100%, but lead back.
Got it. Okay.
Aaron Jones, when he comes back, is in that range.
Yeah, I was thinking A-Chan would be like just shelved in right beneath those guys.
Okay. So about 64-ish.
That's better, yeah.
Maybe 62, something like that, yeah.
I would have him. I don't know his price, so I'll make the guess as well. I'd have him at about 58.
I think I know the price, so I won't guess. But as a thought exercise, because I do think this is an interesting kind of contrast. What do you think Alvin Kamara is priced at? I do know that one.
Oh.
So here's a guy.
There's a good one. Get another few because I don't know what Kamara is, but I do know what A-Chain is.
Okay, I'll let you go because I know what Kamara
Let Evan guess first since he knows the least. I'll guess second.
Guess for which one? I'm sorry.
Alvin Kamara.
His first game back.
Kamara, I think, will definitely be touching about 7,000.
Now, you guys tell me because I think this is a fair comparison, though, because you got one guy coming off a huge performance. Everyone wants to overreact to it. People are going to, maybe not overreact. People are going to react to the talent of Kamara, but they're coming at it from totally different perspectives. So I do think it's interesting.
Because of all the injuries in the running back room, I think they'd have Kamara at 65, but originally I would have guessed about 61. Coming out of the suspension.
So you're at 65. What was that, man?
I guess close to 7,000.
Okay. 65, 7,000.
See, 60 low. See, I would have him in the same spot as like Walker. So like maybe like 66, 67.
Okay. Now, why do you think I know this price?
Because you love Alvin Kamara.
Okay. So I just want to get that out there. There's a bias. I am playing Alvin Kamara. Like, I know I'm not on screen right now, but my eyes are as big as a buck. I'm playing Alvin Kamara. That will happen. He is 6,100.
Really? So with the injury, I was right on the dot if it wasn't for injury.
Now on the other side, I'll let him know. 5,700 is what they moved A-Chain to.
I'm getting good at this.
The fact that he is a couple hundred lower than Kamara is absolutely absurd.
That's insanity. An 700 increase is crazy.
It's absurd. We always try to get out of here and we can never do it, but this was a great exercise. Thanks for doing it. I'm stretched out though. I don't want to go any longer. Don't pull a muscle, Donnie, on your way out. Good night, guys. It was really fun. I can't wait to lineup build this week because I do think we are getting stronger and stronger. Speaking of exercise and resistance, I do think we're getting stronger and stronger, and our week is coming. Hopefully, you guys enjoy the content. If nothing else, like and subscribe on the way out. It does make a difference. And just tell a friend. If you can do one thing for us, even as a small podcast, just tell one person. It can make all the difference as we get closer to 100 subscribers. Again, thank you very much. Good night.
Go Bears.
Peace out, everyone.